I mean, at times it's people coming and saying, hey, I have a story, and then it goes from there. And I mean, we try to have a more structured system as well, where we've got a way in which you can get in touch with us. We've got an email ID that you can send your inquiry to. We send you a release form, and then you send your material to us, and that's where the journey begins. But of course, there are so many writers and directors who we know personally, who we've been in touch with, who say, it could be at a very, very germinating stage of an idea, something that they want to bounce off us, and then we become part of their journey from there. At times you get a complete script which you fall in love with, just 120 pages of something that you just want to move forward with. So it really depends.
Well, you've done a great journey from UTV and then Disney and now your own company. Can you, in a little bit, tell us about that and your trip from UTV to now?
Sure. When we started off at UTV, Ronnie Screwvala, was the founder of the company. He started out in television back in the 80s and then slowly worked his way into starting a movie studio. And when I came on board with him in 2005 is when he greenlit a film called Rang De Basanti. And that's where he really, decided that he wanted to take the next step and become a full-fledged studio. So I have to say, our journey with UTV at that point of time was a very interesting one, because the film industry had tended to be a place which was a pretty close place to be able to break into. It wasn't that easy to be able to find your way in if you weren't born into it. At least at that point of time. It has changed a lot today, which is great. But then it was something quite revolutionary, and I think Ronnie really paved the way in there, and we all went along for the ride and had a great time of it. But that was, I think, a period where, because the relationships with the stars were not really there, and our cultures tended to be a very star-driven culture, right? The route that we followed was teaming up with directors who had stories to tell, and being able to try to tell stories that probably other people were not backing. So, Rang De Basanti, for instance, was a film that was the fourth film about this revolutionary freedom fighter Bhagat Singh in a row. You had your whole cast of characters dying at the end of the film. You had a director who, though being extremely talented, his first film hadn't quite worked. So it was a very tough film for people to back. And I think Ronnie decided that that's one that we should go ahead with, because there wasn't that much to lose. I mean, of course, it wasn't a cheap film, but if the film worked, then it showed that you had the courage of your conviction to back something that was so different. And then in the same year, there was a film called Khosla Ka Khosla, a really small film, very quirky, about the culture in Delhi of having these sort of property sharks out upon you. Very funny but very sad at the same time. And those two films that happened in the same year actually cemented our reputation for being people who tend to back something that might not be par for the cause or something out of the ordinary. That might not be something very ordinary, and then giving it their best shot in terms of marketing it and distributing it like it's a big film. And that's where the journey began, really. And then we've always tried to balance it out by having a larger, more typically commercial mainstream film with films that are swinging for the fences in terms of not really being that sort of film that you would traditionally say might work. And that's what I've tried to do at Royal Kapur Films as well. I've got a great team. A few of them are here in the audience right now. They've been with me for a long time. And we try to do the same balancing out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But as long as you've got at the back of your mind that you want to be able to do all kinds of material, you don't want to straitjacket yourself into doing only one kind of movie.
Is it possible for a producer to have a favorite movie?
Thank you. It's very hard. It's very hard. But the marketer in me says last film show, which is released today. Because it is one of my favorite films that I've been associated with. I have to say, it's because it's one of those movies that makes you fall in love with the whole idea of going to the movies once again. And I know it's spoken in all of us. I mean, me included. I used to be at the cinema at least twice a week, and now I find it more and more difficult to be able to drag myself out to go there. And if that's happening with us who are in the business, then can you imagine what's happening with audiences? But a film like Last Film Show actually tries to evoke that magic of that darkened cinema hall and the shaft of light from the back, projecting onto the screen and creating these images that you can't get your, sort of take your eyes off. And I hope as many people as watch it and in love with going to the cinema hall.
So it's time for an Indian Oscar, is it?
It's been time for a long time. So, I mean, we've all been wanting that to happen for a long time. So, hopefully this is the year it happens.
Fingers crossed. Being at this IIFTC, I mean, about locations, how do you decide where to shoot in the world? Like you have all these countries here.
I mean, the obvious thing is what comes from the script. I mean, where the script is based, the locations that it's actually based in. What you try to do is be as true to where it actually is supposed to be set as you can be. Then when you realize that maybe you can actually treat that elsewhere, is when you start thinking around things like budget, things like logistics, and therefore the feasibility of being able to recreate exactly the same environment elsewhere. And then, there's now a much more structured way to do it. We know all the incentives and the benefits that are being offered by countries as well as states within India. And so then you take that call. But I think it's very important to have the whole creative team along with you for that ride so that everyone is feeling that you're being true to the film and you're being true to the material while still being able to ensure the production efficiencies that are needed to make the film logistically sensible and also financially effective.
But is money still the most important one? Or where do
It's very important because when you've got that blank page in front of you, you can write whatever you want. And that's why we love our filmmakers, right? Because they're not letting their imagination be guided by the constraints that us ordinary mortals. I was quite surprised when they said the producer is God at the start of the session because I don't think any of us think of ourselves as God. God is really the guy sitting in front of that blank piece of paper and making it all up, and we follow their lead. But then, obviously, once you fall in love with the material and you want to make it, then you've got to figure out how to make it. And how to make it involves taking those hard financial decisions around where you're going to be shooting, how true you're going to be to where it's set, versus how much you can create the illusion of it being set there in a place that is more viable to shoot. So budget plays a big role.
I had the impression, I mean, when I started working here, Bollywood was the name somehow for all Indian film industry. But now I realize a few years ago that there are actually several, and things are happening. Where do you see the greatest development in India right now? Is it from here, from the south?
I think there's no doubt that the south of the country at the moment is having quite a renaissance, in many ways. I think Malayalam cinema, from the artistic point of view, is creating some wonderful work that everyone is watching and just marveling at the uniqueness and the sort of originality of the content that they're putting out. I think Telugu cinema is having quite a moment right now where, there have been years of North audiences watching these films on television now in a dubbed version, and I think that's helped a lot because now that sensibility is known to a North audience. The stars are, more well known, and they're taking big gambles and making these massive cinematic experiences that I think the whole of India, and in fact the world, is now coming out to watch. So, these things have their peaks and troughs, you have cycles. I think the current cycle is definitely, and pretty much no doubt about it, the south of the country.
It's interesting, because I also noticed that a lot of my friends in Europe, they've never seen Indian films or TV series before, but now with the streamers, they see a lot. Do you think about foreign viewers when you start developing a film, or do you think of Indian audience first?
Sorry, your question is when a foreign
Do you think about foreign audience or Indian audience first?
I think the Indian audience first, always, because it's such a large audience, right? We have been, in a sense, more insular in that sense because we've got such a large audience of our own, both in India as well as the Indian diaspora around the world, that we've never really had to think of making movies for any other audience than that. And also, the grammar of our filmmaking has been so different. You had your 4-act structure, you had an interval point, you had songs and dances, very, very different things for a non-South Asian audience to wrap their heads around. And sometimes it can appear kitschy, it can appear crazy, it can appear weird, because that's the cinema we've grown up in, and it's very specific to our country. But I think increasingly what we are seeing is that younger filmmakers who've now grown up in India and watched obviously their own cinema, but also cinema from the West and the East and the Far East are now being able to blend those two sensibilities quite well. Again, not because it just released today, but last film show is a great example because it's so authentic and real and set in a very specific place, but at the same time, the style of storytelling is so universal and so global. Those are the kind of movies that now filmmakers who've got a more rounded cinematic like sort of upbringing are now being able to make.
You think the song and dance in Indian movies will stay or will it change?
I hope so. I hope it does because that's what makes us so unique and that's what makes us special. And I do feel that it's something we should embrace and continue to embrace. But there's a space for all kinds of movies, right? You've got your hardcore commercial entertainers that will have songs that come out of nowhere, and and we enjoy that and we love it. But at the same time, there's a space, and there has been now for the last 10 to 15 years, for movies that don't have that and that are more realistic. You had a parallel cinema movement way back in the 70s that began. But unfortunately, it was so niche and so small, and it was only really shown on Doordarshan, which was a terrestrial, the one terrestrial broadcaster at that time, and didn't really get a release in cinema halls. But today, with multiplexes, you've got the chance to be able to go, and with the OTT platforms, frankly, with the streaming platforms. So all kinds of content can survive. But I do hope songs and dances do survive.
Good, I think so too. And what about virgin locations? That's to get you to our countries to find the virgin locations that haven't been shown yet in India. Is that something you still look for?
We're always looking for that. There are so many examples of Hindi films that have been able to popularize places that were not even on the map earlier, at least for India, right? New Zealand was one such place. I remember when Rakesh Roshan showcased it in the first film in which he launched his son Hrithik Roshan, Kauna Pyar Hai. It was just showcased so beautifully. You had Spain that was showcased in Zoya's films. So many examples. Switzerland, of course, with Yash Chopra. It's incredible the excitement that it can generate amongst audiences in India to then go to those places. So we're always looking for that. And I'm glad that we're engaging that much more. I'm glad there's a platform like the IIFTC which can actually help to facilitate that. And we're looking for virgin locations all the time.
I'm getting more personal. You come from a family with a lot of famous actors in all your family. Why are you not an actor? What happened?
Actually, producers are acting all the time.
True.
So yeah, it's a full-time job.
So there's no explanation, no story behind it.
Well, I used to enjoy acting in school and college. I did a lot of theatre, but I suppose to be a film actor, there's a very you have to wait around a lot. You've got to wait between shots. A lot of film acting is waiting, and I think I'm not the kind of person who would be able to take to that too well. So I think quite early on, I figured out that being involved in multiple things simultaneously is what I enjoy much more, and so being a producer just seems to fit my personality better.
You have the highest grades in mathematics, probably.
Not mathematics, but like it's sort of a jack of all trades and master of none sort of thing. So that's, I think a producer has to be a little bit of that.
Do you have any favorite stories, memories from abroad, from where you have shot that you want to share? From any countries you've been to?
Quite a few actually. I remember we were in South Africa shooting for Jaga Jasoos, and there was an ostrich chase that happened there. And that's the most absurd. It came out of Anurag Basu's crazy, brilliant mind, where Ranveer and Katrina doing an ostrich chase, and I happened to be there for that shoot. It was the most surreal thing I'd ever seen. They were sitting on ostriches and running through fields. That was fun.
And the future for your company, what's coming up?
We've got a lot of things in the pipeline, many shows, many series. There's a lot of development going on. We intend to be able to produce content across all genres, across all platforms. We really want to be able to create impact. I think that's the most important thing, to be able to create impact, to get, whatever we put out should be, number one, of a certain quality, and number two, should be something that becomes part of the popular zeitgeist. That I think is very important to us. We don't want to just be doing it by the numbers and just churning out, content, because that's something that can be done, and that's one route that people can go. But every piece of material that we put out, we try to create impact.
Wonderful.
अरे वहाँ की skip था मेरा.
They are very shy today. So you said everything, anything you want to add? Something I forgot to ask you about. Something exciting.
No, I think you've done a great job of drilling me.
No question. Harshad, just one. Give him one question.
I think probably a lot of people would like to meet him, separately and talk to him and have a little chat with him. That's what usually happens in these.
So we push him in a small room.
So I think a lot of people will be looking forward to that. And thank you, Sid, so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's really an
Thanks for
honor.
having me.
Yeah, and I think we can conclude.
Okay, ladies.